To multiply a decimal by a decimal, there's a very simple rule which will always work, and that is ignore the decimal places completely and do the multiplication as usual. So in this example above, what we do is we ignore the 3.9 and the 0.2, and what we work out instead is just 39 multiplied by 2, which I know is equal to 78. And then what I do is add up the total number of decimal places in the numbers being multiplied. So you can see, for example, that this number has one decimal place after the decimal point, and this number has one decimal place after the decimal point. If we add these together, then we get a total of 2 decimal places, and that is how many decimal places the answer will have. So in this case, to give it 2 decimal places, I need to put a decimal place just here, and then I haven't quite left enough room, but I squeeze in a little 0. So the overall answer is going to be 0.78, like that. As another example of this, let's do 2.41 multiplied by 0.05. Now the first thing we need to do is ignore any parts of this that are to do with decimals. So if we look at the 2.41, well, ignoring the decimal point, I get 241. And then if we look at 0.05, well, the first bit is to do with it being a decimal. The bit that I want is just the 5 on the end, so I'm ignoring the decimal part of this number and the decimal part of the 2.41. I'm just treating them both as whole numbers. So 241 multiplied by 5, well, I might need to do a column multiplication for this, but the numbers don't seem too bad, so I think I can work it out. 5 times 200 is 1,000, and then 5 times 40 is 200, and 5 times 1 is 5. So if I work this out, I get 1245. But 1245 isn't the answer, because the second stage in this is to go back to the original numbers being multiplied and add up the decimal places in each of these. So 2.41 has 2 decimal places, and 0.05 has 2 decimal places, and if we add these together, then we get 4 decimal places. So going back to our 1245, what we need to do is add in a decimal place so as to make this, add in a decimal point rather, so as to make this have 4 decimal places. So the decimal point I'm going to add just there, and then I'll put a 0 in front to make it an ordinary decimal number, so 0.1245 is the final answer. The last example we're going to do is to multiply 6 by 0.0016. So the first stage of this calculation is to multiply 6 by 16. Well, 6 tens are 60, and 6 times 6 is 36. So 6 multiplied by 16 is equal to 96. But of course, as before, that's not the answer, because the second stage of what we need to do is to go back to the original numbers being multiplied and work out how many decimal places there are in each. So 6, well, 6 is a whole number, so it doesn't have any decimal places involved at all. But if we look at 0.0016 after the decimal point, because that's the key thing, after the decimal point there are 4 decimal places. So we add 0 to 4, and the total number of decimal places the answer will have is 4. So if we think about 96 again, 96 isn't the answer. We need an answer with 4 decimal places. Now to make an answer with 96 at the end and 4 decimal places, what we do is, if we imagine that the decimal point of the 96 is usually there, we just move it further forward, putting in zeros as we go, until we moved it by 4 positions, like that. So you can see that after this decimal point, we've got 4 decimal places, and then we put a 0 at the start.